Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. On the show today, we have my friend, Chris Jacobs. I met Chris in October at Stewart Alexander's Cobra Hill Retreat, and he's someone I'd love for you to meet. Chris is a registered and approved medium with the Institute of Spiritualist Mediums, an accredited and certified medium with the American Society for Standards in Mediumship and Psychical Investigation. He demonstrates mediumship, has a mediumship mentor program. He works with individuals and groups, as well as giving readings and tutoring in person or through Skype. His website is chrisjacobsmedium.co.uk. Chris Jacobs, a warm welcome to We Don't Die Radio, my friend.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, really, it's nice to talk to you again. We met for the very first time back in October and hit it off great and have been corresponding through Facebook, and here we are.
Yes, it's as we said before, it seems like an age ago, and but what a wonderful place it was at Cobra Hill, wasn't it not?
It was, and for some of our listeners who have listened to past episodes, we talk about physical mediumship, and you've heard me interview Scott Milligan and Stewart Alexander, and this was an opportunity to sit with Stewart Alexander and so many more mediums, and it was just one of those great things for me, Chris, that just gave me the reassurance that we're in the absolutely right place doing what we're meant to be doing here.
Absolutely. And he's, as you said before, Stewart Alexander is such a dedicated spiritual man, and a lovely man to listen to. I could listen to him all day with his vast array of knowledge.
Really incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about you and how your journey started? Because even though we had several cups of tea together, I don't really know, and would love to hear.
Well, it all starts as a child with me. I didn't have a particularly brilliant childhood, and so Spirit was always there for me, somebody I could to talk to rely on, and to help me in times of great need. And but I never saw it and recognized it as Spirit. It was just always a thing of God for me. And a particular one always stood out there for me. And then one day, I think I was about 15 years old, I was on a bus, and typical 15-year-old, I was on the top deck, and I was just, drowsy, I think. And then next thing I heard in my ear was, time to get off. So I jumped up and ran down the stairs and jumped off the bus. In a kind of a daze. I didn't really know where I was. And it was actually 2 stops before I was due to get off. And as I looked up, I actually got off outside a spiritualist church, the SM church for that area. And it was a Wednesday afternoon, and I looked at it, and the voice said to me, go in. So I just said, but the doors are locked. And they said, no, go down the steps, go to the left and go down the steps. So I looked to the left and I found the steps, and I just went down, which is kind of unusual for me because I was so scared of everything at that age that I just followed it blindly. Mm-hmm. And it was a Wednesday afternoon, and it was just a little after 2:00. And they had an afternoon service, as they did in them days. It was a long, long time ago. And I walked in, the service was already in flow, and the medium was already on the stage and demonstrating, although I didn't know her to be a medium. I didn't know anything about it. It was the first time I ever been in a place like this. And as I opened the door and I came in, the medium stopped what she was doing, and she said to me, please do come in, sit at the back, and if you will wait after the service, I've been waiting for you, and you and I will have a cup of tea and a chat. From that, I did exactly as she said, and it was pretty amazing, really.
What kind of things did she say? Was it she's telling
Well,
you?
she told me that she knew what had been happening to me, also in the physical sense as well as the spiritual sense. And she also said, she told me I was a medium, but I had no idea about it. And she told me about the communication that was happening. And I had no idea. I just accepted it all. And she kept using this word natural to me. But this was like, I'm talking like 40 years ago or more now. So, it is a long, long time ago. And so from there, I was told, invited to come back to that church for the, of a circle evening. So I did. And I met a lady there. I was told to give up, as they did in those days. Have you got anything, a message? Come on, you've got something, get up. Which I thought I hadn't. But anyway, I went to this lady, gave her a message. She smiled at me and said, thank you. Came up to me after this, when he'd all finished. And she said to me that what I'd got was correct and that she would like to form a circle and sit with me. And we did. And we sat for very, very many, many years from that. And from that, I then learned about Stansted, and I started going to the Stansted Hall in the very early 80s. I was very fortunate to meet people like Gordon Higginson and all that type of people, and Glyn Edwards, and became a very good friend of Glyn for many, many years up until he passed. So there was quite a lot of people from that era and that genre, which we don't see anymore, really, unfortunately.
No, and I love hearing this because I've heard so much about Glyn and Gordon, and so just picturing you back in those days being part of all that.
Well, I was just in awe of them. I mean, listening to Gordon speak, my word, there's nobody been like him since. In my mind, he could captivate you. You could, he would just hold you enthralled for so long that a couple of hours could go past, and it was just fantastic. His knowledge, his wealth, and then I got to meet him in afterwards, and personally, and he was a lovely, lovely man, a good sense of humour. In those days, in the 80s, even the boys didn't like their hair being touched, so the first thing he ever did every time he saw me was always mess my hair because he knew I didn't like it. And that's something kind of lived on. And from that, with Glyn, I got to know him in the hand very well, and we were quite good friends. I met them all, really, and people behind the scenes too. So it was a lovely, lovely time.
Wow! And did you start right off in your career doing mediumship, or did you have varied?
I was very adamant that I was hell would freeze over before you got me on a stage or anything like that.
Well, apparently hell's frozen over because you've been on stage lots of times.
They did, and it was very funny. I can tell you a little story about that. I mean, it was only many, many years later that I did get up on the roster, and because life gets in the way and you have a lot of things to sort out, and which I did, because the Spirit told me that, in order for me to move forward, and this was some years ago, that I really needed to sort out my life and sort out my past, come to terms with what happened to me, and work through that. And learn to, because really the Spirit was my guide was so loving and still is, in way he told me that, in order for me to do this and for order me to love people and love what I do, I first had to learn to love myself. And it was so true. It was so true. We cannot be a true advocate for Spirit unless you love the Spirit within.
That's pretty deep.
Yes.
Coming from somebody that is, every time I hear that I have to love myself, it's like, how do I do that? How do we start? How do we love the Spirit within?
It's not an easy journey, Sandra. It really isn't. And, and that journey still carries on, but it's all part of the rich array of life, is it not?
Yes.
The thing is you've got to, we all recognize we are spirit, but that love, we have to love who it is, like the old saying, warts and all. We need to love everything about us and understand, I think for quite a few of us, we tend to keep ourselves in the role of victim or in the role of dire need all the time. And there is no need to that. I mean, if we only lifted our head and looked at the beauty of nature that surrounds us and understand that we are not separate from it, but we are a part of it all, of one great big whole. And then we start to come to understand ourselves, our role, and the spirit.
It's so easy, Chris, to look at other people and love them. Yes. And then to be in any one of our own heads, and usually the conversations we have with ourselves, we would never talk to another person the way sometimes we badmouth ourselves internally. So it's
exactly, we are not as cruel as we are to ourselves. As with other people, I tell my students, and they laugh at this, they love that, and I just say, love others. Love others. You don't have to like them, you just have to love them. But with ourselves, if we can start loving others and understand that love, then we can start bringing it back to ourselves. Be a little bit more forgiving. I'm human. I'm in a human experience. I make a mistake, so I don't need to chastise myself. I've made a mistake, and hopefully I'll learn from it. Mm-hmm. And those are just the simple steps, for that beautiful blending that we all want with the spirit world. Isn't it going to be so much purer, so much greater with the less barriers that we put up?
Definitely. I wanted to ask you too, when you were a child and you said that spirit was talking to you, and even just recently you said something about your guide. Although I do believe I'm a medium, and many others, well, I think as souls, we all have it to an extent. There was nothing natural about it. There's times that I've been very right on doing readings, and other times way off. So natural doesn't fit me. But for you, how did the spirit world appear to you as a child? Or I guess what I'm really hoping is for some access way that I can believe and work with my own spirit team, or know that there's a guide there. Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yes, I do. Yes, it does. When I'm saying natural, I mean the communication between me and the spirit world was very natural. It was normal for me. I was very, very shy. I would, you would never know I was there half the time. I never spoke to people, but I spoke to the spirit world so naturally. It was so free-flowing. They knew the pain. They knew what was happening to me, and I started to rely on them very easily. I mean, there were times that I suffered horrendous abuse, and when this was going to happen, this is what I mean by natural. I would feel and sense the presence of spirit and know they were there, and I would hear a gentle voice in my mind saying, "It's time to move aside." And I'd learned as a child that, when things were going to happen to me, that I could, in my mind, kind of move aside, not move out of my body or anything like that. I never experienced anything like that. But it was moving aside within my mind into that space, that higher mind, where what was happening to the physical didn't really affect as much. Therefore, yes, it was still traumatic, but I didn't have to go through that trauma at that moment.
Well, that's pretty incredible and inspiring, because there still is a lot of abuse on our planet.
There is.
Yeah, of all kinds.
It is very unfortunate. But, I do believe, Sandra, that we do have the answer ourselves. And the trouble is, we don't go in enough. You say you want to know your guide. For me, I kept saying, right, I want to know your name, I want to know your face, I want to know who this, that, and the other. I just knew they were there. And, all I got was one day, yes, I'll give you a name. And, And it was 20 years before I got to get a name, And by then, when that happened, I said, well, why? He said, know me by my feel, know me by my touch. Any fool can say a name. And I understood that.
Makes sense. And for me, and I think for many of us, no matter how many radio shows I do or conferences I've been to, left to my own devices, sitting in my own room, I feel very much alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it takes something to have that trust and be able to maybe trust the spirit world is here for me and be the first one to open communication and talk and send messages out. And then it also, and I think you will agree, it takes quieting our mind to be able to receive the answers back. When we're so busy watching television or being on our computer, I don't know if it's so easy for the spirit world to get in and impress a message.
I'm sure they're quite vexed at times with the things that go on. Yes, we need this stillness and we need that, but understand this, we are never alone, ever. The more time I spend on my own, the greater sense that I'm a part of something. The connection with the spirit world, with all that is. The first road, and Gordon always used to speak this, I think the first stop we need to go is we need to discover, and understand God, the Great Spirit, the Divine Presence, whichever you want to call it. And we only discover that, and I'm quite an advocate of prayer, not by paying it lip service, but by taking your thoughts, your prayer, your feelings to that divine source first and discovering that. And through that, we discover that God presence within. You start to feel that. And from that, it filters out to the spirit world. You say that you'd love to feel the presence of spirit. Just sit for a moment and understand who you are. And you should feel your own soul, your own spirit first and foremost. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm taking lots of notes. And as my listeners know, I'm part of this radio show. Every episode is just as much for me as it is for every listener. And I think we all want that.
Yes.
So in prayer isn't something I often do. And loving myself first, those kind of things. So this is obviously a perfect conversation. And I wanted to just go back. You had mentioned Gordon Higginson.
Yes.
And first of all, I encourage people to look Gordon up on whether it's YouTube or there's a great Gordon Higginson tribute site, gordonhigginson.co.uk. There's so many teachings from Gordon, from Glenn, from people of the past that are available. And I don't know if that level of mediumship is being taught in this day and age.
I think we've talked about the internet and all these stimulus. And what's happened, unfortunately, for us is we want everything instant.
Yes.
And, the things with the spirit, the things with mediumship, it takes time. It evolves. And something, after all these years, I'm still evolving. I'm still learning. I'm still going forward. And I hope that I continue through this life and beyond. And I know that I will. As to whether we would ever see that level of mediumship again, everything in life evolves. So I believe, I have great faith that we will see things of that ilk, but they're just maybe not coming forward in the right way at the moment. It is a great shame. When you think back to what they had and what we have now, there wasn't all the great computers, phones, and all these things of distraction. And so they had more time to develop, more time to evolve, and more time to devote. It is a great shame, as I say to students and to people, those who come forward to me, well, how can I get there? How can I get there? And I just answer commitment. You have to be committed.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't seem to want that anymore.
The first weekend class that I went to on mediumship, it was in the United States, and I really had the question. At that point, I was still, is there any reality of the afterlife? And someone made a commitment that if you attend this weekend, I can show you you're a medium. So I had to go, thinking I was going to prove it the otherwise. But out of my own mind and mouth came such accurate information for people. But at the end of the weekend, this woman handed me a certificate that I was now a certified medium from a weekend, right? Now, obviously, I knew better, that I wasn't going to go work with people, and I still had fears and doubts and things like that. But and I'm not blaming America as a whole, but I think there's a lot of people that think it's just as easy as taking a weekend course or reading a couple of books or something like that. And I've met some people that have been trained by some of the greats and really have sat for years in circles and things like that. And I can see the level of mediumship being so much more accurate, in tune with the spirit world, besides just maybe a name and a place, or with more specifics. And so there is, and one of the things I'm committed to, and I'm grateful I'm talking with you too, is to let people know there is much more available in mediumship than, so many people, Chris, have had bad medium readings and have realized, oh, it can't be real. Well, there are people that have taken the weekend courses and things like that, and there are those that have sat for years, and it's out there. So part of my ambition and goal is to raise the standards globally for mediumship.
And I applaud you on that, and we need more people like you. You see, everybody's such a hurry to be a medium. Everybody wants to be a medium. Now, in my day of training, I'm still doing it, still training. We need people who do, as I call it, the background people. We need people who are dedicated to the cause of spirit. We need people who will bring on the mediums of tomorrow. We need the people who are good at philosophy, who are good at prayer, and these ones who can lay the ground, as it were. And a lot of these people are not don't stand up there giving evidence, but they still connect and have a deep love of spirit, and you can feel it emanate from these people. My old circle leader, rest her soul, was a true advocate for spirit, and truth be known, she used to terrify me sometimes. But the love, the dedication that was there to the spirit, even though she was not, as she would have it, as a medium, but yet she never doubted the courage that she would stand up there with. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I'd love to see people like that again. Let's not have, so we get too top heavy with the mediums. That's not everybody being medium. We need these people who do the groundwork. We need these people who will actually, be the foundation and be those that recognize mediumship in others and help encouragement.
Good words. And I do think, too, the more we can share and have people actually experience, whether it's a demonstration or a one-on-one, that level of mediumship, it's like, oh, I didn't know that was available. And then that, in turn, in time, will raise the level up a bit. Because I think there are some really good, wonderful people that their heart's in the right place. They just don't know that they can develop that much more.
They don't trust themselves in a lot of time. They stick to a set format. Okay, there are good teachers out there, and you can go with the teacher, but you've got to understand also, this is your learning, your development. and you need to put in a greater quota. You need to experiment with it. You need to go further. When I talk to the spirit world, I don't say, oh, what a good medium am I, or anything. I ask the spirit after each demonstration, how was that for you? What is your need? What can I do better for you? Because I'm just the mouthpiece. And that's all I ever see myself as. As you know, I think you might have gleaned from me already, I'm not a natural person that likes to stand out in front of people.
Right.
It dreads me. It fills me with dread sometimes. But when I allow the spirit to move me, it has no effect.
That's beautiful.
I go out and I do it and do that. And people often say, how come you give so much evidence? I said, I give you nothing, but I follow what spirit shows me and what gives me. And I follow their conversation. It's too much now of this set format. You have to give an M, you have to give this, you have to give that. How about trusting the spirit and allowing them to lead the conversation, but then you having the insight, knowing where to pick up on it and explore it and expand it. There are things like, say, for instance, I've heard it many times where people say, oh, I know I've gone to a front door and I know there's a 2 on it and the door's black. Mm-hmm. And then they treat that as evidence and people go, oh yeah, that's great, thank you. Well, how about looking at the number? What more? If that was me, I'd be saying, what other number's there? May I open the door and see what's beyond? Go back to the spirit and ask them, and then physically open the door in your mind. See what rooms lead off from that hallway or wherever it is from behind the door. What do you see of personal effects? Now that's evidence.
That's right.
Most people nowadays will have a black door. Quite a lot of people will know a black door somewhere. Mm-hmm. But going into the rooms beyond, seeing that photograph, that special ornament, seeing the person within the photograph, that's evidence, and that's what we need.
I think it's easy for people to forget or even visualize that the unseen world, they're living, breathing, I would guess, in their own way. They're people. We still exist. We're still ourselves. And so to have your commitment first and foremost with them and bringing their messages, I don't believe they're balls of light or balls of energy. I believe they're people. And
I hate that terminology, energy. We can say, and I've got this energy and that energy. If I was coming back from the world of spirit, I would take offense at somebody just calling me a blob of light or something, as beautiful as that light may be. I'm a person. Mm-hmm. I want something of my character to come forward here, And the thing is as well, we're talking about here the mediums as well, but we also need to talk about the sitter. We need these, as sitters, what are we prepared to accept as evidence? Where we go away is, oh yeah, I've got grandmother here and she's in a frilly apron and she's cooking a Sunday roast. Whoopee.
That's everybody's grand.
Yes. Well, how about the granny that was there, that made something special for you, helped you, allowed you to go all of these different things? Where's her personality? Where is that part of her that you loved? We've got to remember when we're talking with the thing of the spirit world, it's not a one-way conversation. As you and I are having this conversation here, you're leading me, and we need to do that the same with the spirit. We need to, evolve that conversation where they're saying, oh, I'm dad here, and you got my daughter here, and I loved her, and I was into racing cars. Okay, so we need to say, okay, Dad, what kind of racing cars? Did you have collections of toys? Did you go to the track? Was it TV? And allow them then to lead that conversation, and you follow, and it be a to and fro thing. That's mediumship.
Chris, when they work with you, do they use all your senses? I mean, do you feel things? Do you see things? Do you hear things? Do you just know things?
One should follow, in my mind and everything, and it does. I can speak in my experience. I hear many people saying, "I'm just a clairsentient," or "I'm just this," and "I'm just that." One faculty should lead on to the next. First and foremost, people say, "Well, I'm just a clairvoyant. I just see." Mm-hmm. If you just see, how do you know anybody's there? You've got to sense. It has to start with the sensing of the spirit world. Sensing there, and who am I sensing? And let it work its way up, and that's that it goes to the higher mind, and then you start and the pictures feed in with the sensing, so it all becomes one. We don't walk around a park with our eyes closed and feel the tree.
No.
We see the tree, we feel it, we experience it. And the same with the mediumship. I believe all the faculties need to be working together. Yes, some of them will be slightly stronger than the other. But sensing is for me, when people just say, "Well, I just sense," that's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Through our sensing, can we get, we can sense an object, we can sense its definition, we can, go on from there.
Good advice. And this is all coming from Sandra, who's dipped her toe into the mediumship courses now and again, but has never made a commitment to practice or to...
Do you know something? I can tell just by the way you're talking to me. Sandra, may I ask you, are you slightly insecure?
Yes.
Okay. I can tell this when you're talking to me, because don't underestimate what you do. You're doing what you're meant to be doing by doing this. You followed implicitly. You wrote a book.
Right. You
speak to the spirit world and you get this out to your listener. You touch many people's lives. And wow, and that's greater than some mediums on a stage.
I totally get that. And there are many times that I don't really take in the impact of what it is that I'm doing. But Chris, there's also a point that I get stopped by fear. And and so I know in the realm, and not that I want to be a platform medium or anything like that, but just for my own letting fear stop me. And so you've given me some great tools so far. We're never alone. Love ourselves first. Prayer. These things. These are ways in, which I think are great. But I just don't want to be stopped by fear. I know to an extent we're all humans and we will, but for myself, I think there's a breakthrough.
Fear is a very man-made thing. It's, you have to turn it around and flip it around. It's fear of not succeeding. It's fear of being let down. It's fear of this, that, and the other. Let's flip it around. What if we do succeed? What if we do make progress? When we get that fear, let's flip it around. What am I going to do if I do? How is this going to impact my life? Fear is just the conscious mind of keeping us segregated and keeping us, to ourselves, basically. And, we're not. Look out, when I feel fearful, and I do sometimes, we all do, it's a natural thing. I just look out at beauty, at the beauty of the nature, the beauty that surrounds me. I can even find beauty in man-made things, and look at the beauty, of a certain building. How did that come about? How was that made within that person's mind? Did this spirit world inspire that? It's going that little bit deeper.
It's interesting. I don't know why I feel drawn to say this now, but I was watching a video about changing habits. And if there's habits you don't like, it's different areas of the brain that are involved when you have a deep-seated habit. But the advice was to find something and be curious about it. So tied in along with this is just taking a moment to be in the present moment and look for the beauty, be curious, be interested. But it's just interesting to me how that is coming up in this conversation, and what a useful tool.
It certainly is. I mean, as spiritual people, as spiritualists, yes, we want that communication with spirit, but it's not all about the spirit per se. It's about the spirit within, nurturing and feeding that spirit within, so that when we go back home to the spirit world, we've not wasted our time. We're going back with more knowledge than what we came for, a better understanding of who we are, where we fit in, and how we can benefit the greater good.
Do you think that's the point of us coming to Earth? Or do you have any thoughts about why we get born into this?
Yeah, and you know something? My wife had a very interesting philosophy about this, and I just love it so much. And I do, and I quote it because I think it's brilliant. And she said, if you come from a place that is all white and all beauty, how do you ever expect to experience colour?
Beautifully said.
And that resonated so much with me. You need to see the colour of people's personalities. We have to understand our individual person, our individual self, but yet celebrate that part of the great spirit that we are. But yet that we are responsible for our individuality, to understand the many facets of love and how vast that is, and how to understand, if we can't understand somebody else, how can we understand ourselves, and vice versa?
Very true. And everything you had said about me and insecure, and I think for many of us, we are 1 in 7 billion. We are special.
We are special. And how many few of us out of that 7 billion absolutely recognize that? When you think about all these people on the planet now, have a thought about all the many millions and billions that didn't make it. How special it is to be experiencing this.
Gives me a lot of appreciation for other people as well.
Yes.
Being special.
I look at people sometimes, not everybody's going to agree with you, not everybody is going to understand your point of view, but the odd ones do. But I look at the rest, well, maybe they're just not awake yet, but their time will come.
That's right. That's why we can't push this on other people as much as we'd like to sometimes. Chris, yes. I want to ask you how you got involved with Stewart Alexander and the Cobra Hill gang, because that's pretty extraordinary what I witnessed, and I seem to think you've been attending for a while.
Actually, I've seen him a while ago when he came to, it was actually at Banyan sometime. I saw him with a talk. I'd already seen him there, but then there was a time, sorry, I forgot about it, when my circle leader invited him. In those days, he would come to various homes and do a seance, and I was very fortunate. I was still only very young then, and I think it was the very early 90s that he came to my circle leader as home in a place called Ansdell, and there he was with his guide, and I was so enamored and just awestruck, that here he was speaking with this American accent and knew so much and about us, and it was just it was a wonderful thing to witness.
Yeah, to me, I've feel so grateful between sitting with Stewart Alexander and once with David Thompson and many times with Scott Milligan. It brings this is physical mediumship I'm now talking about to the listener, if you don't know. But it's a whole nother world of what I call miraculous of being human, is to just witness some things that the mind is saying can't be possible, yet we are experiencing them. And it makes me think, what else is possible?
There is if you don't mind sharing, if you allow me to share this with you and your listener.
Sure.
Here, many, many years ago, I think I was probably 18 at the time. Glyn Edwards, I was very fortunate. Glyn Edwards took me to a circle he was sitting in, and Almita said, and it was a physical circle at that time. And I had no experience of this. I didn't even know what physical circle was. And there was the medium, his wife, there was Glenn, and Jean Matheson. I don't know if you ever heard of Jean Matheson. No. She used to help both Glenn and Gordon and was a true advocate for spirit. Lovely, lovely lady. And myself. And we sat there. We had to prepare in the afternoon. I was told, we have to meditate. And I was given the rules, the regulations for that evening. Okay, so there's my thinking, my goodness, what's going to happen here? This is a bit all strange. So we went into the room, and in this room, it was all darkened. So we went in with the lights. There was a big, heavy oak table in the middle, and on this table was a trumpet, which is a cylindrical cone, and there were little dangly little bells hanging from the ceiling as well. So I looked around, I thought, this is all rather strange. But what I was told was, we do not mention about this physical medium or what happens, because the physical medium didn't know he was a physical medium. And he thought he just went to sleep.
Really?
Yeah. So I thought, right, okay. So I did my part, played my part. And he went into his trance or sleep as he thought he did it. And as soon after, straight after, little tunes were playing on these little bells in the ceiling. And I thought, oh, this is really good. It was still in the dark, so you're trying to see what you can see, but you can't. This was just nothing.
Right.
Then they were doing what was known as the table, and it was A, B, C, and it stopped on various letters. And there were whole things in between that I can't remember. So they were going on with this, and being young and impatient as I was at that time, I thought, God, this needs to be quicker, A, B, C. So in my mind, I said, does the spirit was right? Spirit world, if this is true, what I am seeing, and all that I have been told that I will become, and what will happen to me, is true, take this table, this oak table that needs 2 men to lift it, into the air and rest it just above my head, because surely that should not be beyond the realms of possibility, and I will never doubt you again. Well, I said this in my mind so nobody could hear me. Mm-hmm. This table started jumping up and down, going mad, and everybody's saying, slow down friends, we can't get the AB, we don't know what the words are, slow down. Well, next thing, this trumpet, the table stopped, this trumpet started banging on the table, then it flew up into the air, up to around the ceiling, and it had a luminosity strip around it, mm-hmm. and it whizzed around the centre of the room so fast, there was just a glowing circle of light where it was, and then it whizzed right in front of me and stopped a hair's breadth from my nose. And this voice that came down, this trumpet, and a voice like I'd never heard before. He said his name was Brother David. And he came through and he said, and these were his words, and I've never forgotten that all these years later. He said, my child, we are not here to entertain you, but merely prove that we do exist and that all you have been told is true. And then he said, circle over, and this trumpet went back to the centre of the table and went down. I can't express to you the love that I felt at that moment, and the love that was coming from this inanimate object, how it felt to me. So we closed the circle, and everybody was asking, turning to me, what did you say? What did you do? I swear to you, I couldn't speak for an hour afterwards. I really could not. And that was my experience of that. Nobody in that room knew what I said or what I'd asked.
Pretty great. Chris, what gives you passion these days?
What gives me passion? My wife, of course. Doing what I do and loving what I do. When you're giving a message to somebody, like a few weeks ago, I was giving a lady I'd never met before, and her son came through, and the message, and you can quite clearly see how that touches their heart. You can see it in their eyes, and that touch, and knowing at that moment that son and mother have been reunited, and feeling that passion and that love. That, to me, there is nothing else in this world that can compare to that. That's what makes it worthwhile, what I do. And that's what makes it worthwhile going through all that we do. To just do that. To give those bits of evidence, that bit of communication that is, unique and, indicative to just them too. And incidentally, that same message, she messaged me back afterwards. He said something about to her, my birthday's on the 9th of April. She turned around emphatically and said, no, it isn't. It's the 9th of January. So I said, I'm sorry. He's saying the 9th of April to you. Leaving that. And then I've got to tell you as well, you will see a field of blue flowers. You will be in a field of blue flowers. So these people go away, and unfortunately not everybody comes back to you, but she came back. This is the power of spirit. She was on a plane going on holiday, and she got to the runway, and as she looked, she was doing her phone. She was putting it onto flight mode. Facebook came up with, today is your son's birthday. And that date was 9th of April. And as she looked out of the window on the field of the airport, it was nothing but blue flowers.
Wow.
Now, isn't that wonderful what spirit can do? Mm-hmm. They went there, it was kind of a prediction, but they knew what they were going to do. And she couldn't wait till she landed. As soon as she landed, she texted me and told me that. Now, for me, that makes the hairs on my back of my neck stand up. Yes. That spirit can do that. If I was told that, how can anybody say that we do not go on? How can anybody say that the spirit world is all a malicious lie when you get something like that? Mm-hmm. And it touches that person, that mother, so much. I just think it's marvelous. And I've never ceased to be amazed by what spirit can do and what they do, and how they help us and how they can, really, I asked my guide here, what is the relevance of all this, what I do in the spirit world? And he turned to me very simply. My guide is very, very plain speaking. And he just says, so that you will live your life till its fullest. And I get that.
Mm-hmm. Good words for all of us.
It certainly is.
Wow. And Chris, you currently, just want to talk about your website, chrisjacobsmedium.co.uk. You are in the UK, and I'm sure you welcome people one-on-one, but do you do readings? I said it in the introduction, on Skype.
Yes, I do. I do worldwide readings, funny enough. I've done them in your home country on numerous occasions. And I think there's one I do, I won't mention any names, but there's a couple I do in India. And I think it's wonderful, it's such a religious place. And they come and have a reading with me. And I think and it's so open and I think it's beautiful. I think, yes, we go on about technology that somehow it slows it down, but it makes the world so much smaller.
I think it's great because, well, especially for many of my listeners and myself, we wouldn't be able to connect without this. We're recording this through Skype, and it helps. And so it really doesn't matter if you're sitting in front of a person physically or not. Mm-hmm. You can still make that connection, and it's beautiful.
You don't need that person physically in front of you. Skype is an absolute wonderful tool because spirit are where you are. They don't need to be sat right in front of that other person. You don't need that. You can do it through this wonderful medium of technology. And spirit welcome that.
And our loved ones are around us, and we can speak with them ourselves. We don't have to wait. I think we get more evidence coming through an evidential medium, but it doesn't mean that our loved one is waiting for that time in a few weeks that you and I connect on Skype to be near me.
Exactly. I often say to people, and they say, well, how do I know, say, when my husband's around me? I said, are there points in your day where you're so absorbed in what you're doing, then all of a sudden you'll just instantly think of your husband and or your partner or whoever it is. Mm-hmm. And that's when I say, that is spirit coming to us. I have a sister in the spirit world, and some days I don't think about it, and then all of a sudden, her name will just flash in my mind, and I know she's there. And then I'll feel it. So yes, we can, you don't need a medium to talk to spirit. Sit down and talk to them, and they will find ways of making some sort of communication with you. Obviously it's not going to be the evidential or things like that, or the in-depth, but they will find a way of communicating. Why not? Because they love you so much as you love them, and they want to carry on, showing that love, and they'll use whatever means they can to do that.
It's very special. I know of someone who will sit at their kitchen table and pour a cup of tea for themselves and an empty cup across the way and just carry on a conversation with their loved one. And I love that.
I think that's so special. That's brilliant. Why not? Mm-hmm. The thing, when people say to me, how far is the spirit world away? I said, it's closer to you than your own breath.
Well, that's pretty close.
And that is close. It is all around you. It is you. You're in it. It's not that we suddenly go from this universe to another universe. It is a mere transition of vibration. Spirit closer to you than whatever you feel and think.
I just got a vision of this gigantic spirit world, and then here's the earth inside of it. Instead of us thinking that we're out, somewhere the spirit world is outside of us as we're in it.
Exactly. We're all part of it. It's all one intrinsic web. I always think I look, in the morning of say it's a particularly dewy morning, you go out an early morning and you see the spider's web dripping in dew. I look at that with marvel and think, there is the spirit world. It's all interlinked. It all marries together in perfect harmony.
I like it. Chris, our time is quickly coming to an end, looking at the clock now. If you wouldn't mind, I know you offer a mentorship program, and I believe your 2019 one is already in full swing. But do you welcome people who have an interest in mediumship to contact you directly and work one-on-one?
Yes, I do. I offer one-on-one as well to them, and I try and suit their needs. But yes, I welcome all forms. I think it's wonderful that that we can do this again. We can do this via Skype as well. So I don't always need you to be in the room with me.
That's pretty great. Pretty great. Because I know there's people these things resonate with. And for you who's listening, if it resonates, go forward. Well, Chris, do you have a final thought that you can leave us with on this day?
On this day, what I would say is, take a look at yourself. Smile at that person in the mirror as you would smile at a stranger, as you would smile at life itself. And recognize, whatever you're going through, you're not alone. There is always somebody there to share it, be in the physical or the spiritual world. But understand one thing. There is not one person on this earth that is not loved and wanted or needed.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chris, for being our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I feel the same way. And for our listener, thank you for spending this hour with Chris Jacobs and myself. You can visit Chris's website at chrisjacobsmedium.co.uk. As a reminder, all of our shows are at WeDon'tDieRadio.com, as well as the last 100 of them are on iTunes, and they're all on YouTube as well. Just type in We Don't Die Radio. I do invite you to join what I call our Insiders Club, and it's my mailing list, but you get a free healing audio called How to Survive Grief, my 19 Reasons to Believe in the Afterlife PDF file, and it says several chapters from my book, We Don't Die, but the truth is it's the whole book for you to read if you like. Also, if you are a Facebook user, you can type in We Don't Die Listeners, and there's a private community group that we discuss these episodes and just the latest and greatest, and it's a really great place for you to connect with like-minded people. I know we all don't have people in our day-to-day lives that we can share these extraordinary stories with and even talk about being human and prayer and the spirit world, but we can talk about all that inside the group. So in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain, and I'm always delighted to be your host on We Don't Die Radio. I do believe that life is an education for the soul and that your life here on earth is important. So a little challenge to everybody: look in the mirror, love that person, realize we are never alone, and maybe if we're not praying, dip our toe into the power of prayer and be in communication with your God, the divinity, whatever it is you would like to call it. But start with the power of prayer. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.